Hello everybody and welcome to September. Look, we've still got people coming in, so if you'll just bear with us for a moment as people join and the audio connects, we'll start in just a minute. Looks like we've still got people coming in very slowly. While we're people doing that, so I want to get started relatively quickly. A couple of people coming and going, maybe connection issues. I'll get started, and if we need to come back a little bit, we can do that. So, my name is David Manning, Designated Support Specialist with Autodesk. Welcome to the Plant 3D User Community Virtual Meetup for 8th of September 2020. Okay, the next page. So yes, as usual, standard webinar rules. If you could, everybody should be muted unless you're actually asking a question. And I think I need to unmute everybody for you to be able to unmute yourself. So for now, everyone's probably muted. If you have a question, please at any stage in the GoToWebinar panel, there's a Q&A box. If you put a question in there, then you can absolutely ask those at any stage, and I will address those questions at the appropriate time. I do have that open on my screen so I can see as they come in. And it doesn't matter when you ask them, you put them in at any stage, whenever it comes to mind, and I'll get to them when it's appropriate or as soon as I can. There is also a chat option, which is for general comments and chatting. You can chat with the entire audience or just myself and the panelists, or maybe you can't do the rest of the audience. We'll have a look at that. A bit later on, I'm expecting Vinod will probably join us if he's not already here, which looks already is. Thank you, Vinod, for joining me. And as always, the webinar is being recorded, which is why we need those mute buttons to be on to help with the fidelity of the recording. And it will be made for you in our permanent home now on the YouTube playlist in the next day or so, or the longest couple of days. It's actually pretty quick now that we're doing it in this format. As discussed before, so my name's David Manning. I'm a designated support specialist and I work for Autodesk, and we provide support to our enterprise customers and communities around the world, predominantly in Plant 3D, but also many of our other AEC products and manufacturing products. I've been here for a little over 5 years with a major interest in mechanical design, and I'm also really interested in additive and the generative manufacturing and how that can relate to the industrial and the piping industries. Vinod's with me here as well. I think he's struggling with audio. Did you want to introduce yourself, Vinod?
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thanks. Hi, everyone. So I'm Vinod. I'm the technical lead for AutoCAD toolsets, and I'm responsible for any business escalations, new release preparation work for both customers, partners, and EBA customers, and also creating high quality content that I believe most of you are aware of Autodesk Knowledge Network. Creating and curating content down there are some of the responsibilities that I've been tasked to, and I've been with Autodesk for more than a decade now. And I'm part of this meetup sessions along with David. Thanks, David, for inviting me. Yeah.
Well, yes, thank you for coming. So Vino will be there helping me with the difficult questions and answering things in the Q&A panel as we go along as well. And Vinod provides a wonderful service to me in case I lose audio, which happens every once in a blue moon. The new normal, right? COVID normal. Right, so for today, how many have we got people here today? 19, wonderful. Okay, so the overview today, as always, we touch on the Plant 3D general news and updates. then the main theme for today is pipe supports, how we use them, tips and tricks, and what that looks like in Plant 3D. Some really valuable content there. There's been so many questions over the years and so much development to help make them better. Since I started using it back in, was it version 2010, back in 2010. Seems like a long time ago. And of course, we always try to allow time at the end. We can go through some Q&A. I don't think there's any follow-ups from last month, so that's great. We've been doing those now into a Word document and publishing them. We'll see how that goes in the future, but that's saving you having to wait till the following month and provides a bit of a record there for you as we go through. So we do that for any questions that weren't answered. Looking at today's specific topics, so the theme being pipe supports, three main areas we want to look at is a general overview of pipe supports, how they work, creating custom supports and all the nuances around that, and a few tips and tricks and best practices that as the support community we're seeing a lot of customers struggling with, or ways to make your life a little bit easier when you're using pipe supports. As always, this is supposed to be a casual engagement, conversation between the support team and the community. So feel free to engage with us either verbally or through the chat or through the Q&A panels. Would really love to hear from you, your experiences or any questions you've got. The safe harbor statement is as standard. It really is around saying that we will tell you, we'll be honest and open with you as much as we can and to the information we have available to us today. But things do change, and in order to, we need you to, we do recommend and suggest that you do validate any decisions directly with Autodesk, get them in writing before making purchasing or investment decisions, as we may not be privy to things that are happening in the background. So always try to be honest and open, but please do validate things directly. So right into the nitty-gritty, Plant 3D news. Now we're going to start at a not such a bright note, so I added some bright colors to this one to make it a little bit happier. What we're going to do is we're aligning the Plant 3D community meetups with the rest of the meetups that happen for the rest of the disciplines. So if you're not aware, we've got meetups for mechanical, for architectural, for the BIM managers, for the BIM users, for the manufacturing teams, for the generative design teams. There's a lot of meetups you can attend all around the industries. Plant 3D was one of the first to ever come out, and I think we started this in June 2017, and I think it was the first one, and it actually started in the Asia Pacific region. So we're actually one of the longest running community meetups starting in this region. And because everybody's come on board now, we're trying to align so that everything's consistent. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to stop doing these meetups in APAC time zone and actually the European time zone and move it to where the bulk of the audience is and into a time that's going to suit the European and the American audience. So unfortunately for us here in Asia Pacific, that means we're no longer going to have the live sessions as you do today, and we're going to have to rely on the YouTube playlist. The benefit of that is it means it's on demand at any stage for you from that YouTube playlist. They will be continue to be posted there, and the content will be continue to be high quality. It's just going to be delivered the once in the American time zone. So I hope you can make it to that one. It's pretty early in our time zone, but if you happen to be traveling after COVID unlocks the doors, then maybe you can attend it live again. That said, AU, something Autodesk University 2020, we do numerous of these around the world in previous years, the main one being in Las Vegas. It's kind of going the other way around. COVID lockdowns keeping everybody from traveling, and so the conference in Las Vegas is not happening in Las Vegas this year. We're moving it to a fully online environment, which is great. Kind of the reverse, we're bringing it to everybody live. Big advantage of that is there's going to be no cost to join this year. You do need to register, and that allows us to do a number of things, but registration is required to participate, and you can watch all the webinars, all the classes, all the keynotes, all that live if you want to in AU's time zone, as well as getting them on demand in a very short format as they're being presented. It's going to be a really interesting year, hopefully a groundbreaking format for the conferences in this format, and we'll see similar things. But if you haven't been to an AU before, this is a perfect opportunity to get in the door. There's no need to get your boss to approve the expenditure, and there's no need to worry about having to travel, and you can make time to watch these things. It is going to be a huge event. There should be, I'm expecting an awful lot of people to be able to attend, because you don't need to be there in person, and there's going to be some absolutely amazing advantages and changes to the virtual environment to get us engaging and networking and doing all these great things together in as much as we can online. Very exciting, very interesting experience is going to be. To do that, we have put the registration link there. It isn't open just yet. It will open in mid-September. I can't tell you exactly when in September. I would just suggest about mid-September, and you should be able to register then. So keep an eye on that link, and it will tell you exactly when you can then register to join. So as I said, one global event is scheduled for the 17th. That is in the American time zone, so that makes it the 18th and 19th for us here over in Asia Pacific on the other side of the international date line. But it is going to broadcast globally. Anybody can access it, and there's going to be numerous things to engage people in various areas, like the Q&As and things for sessions will be available at various times, friendly to multiple parts of the world. And if you're in Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, or European time zones, so the date will be the 18th, but it is still the same conference, and everyone is working together as much as we can globally. So if you haven't done that before, seriously recommend getting in there and taking advantage of the first free, I think, ever AU, and seeing what all the excitement's about generally. Okay. Going to pause there while we just got any questions before we go into the pipe supports main theme for the day. Already at quarter past the hour and nearly at quarter past. I don't want to rush it, but I certainly want to get through the content. I'm not seeing any questions or chats, so I'm going to keep moving. Don't forget, will AU be recorded? Absolutely, Richard. Yes, AU is often recorded, not every class, but a lot of classes are recorded every year anyway. This year is going to be special because of the way it's being delivered. I believe every class is going to be made available on demand. There will be live Q&As for a bunch of classes. I expect all of them. What time zone those Q&As fit, it will be varied and highly dependent. But yes, I think every class, every keynote is going to be online and on demand available from pretty much instantly after it's scheduled. So that's going to be really interesting. That's part of the excitement. Really cool to see how that works. I've got my class in. It's not on Plant 3D, unfortunately. It's on, actually, no, it is. It's a collaboration class. So if you're interested, come to our introduction to Plant 3D collaboration class and we can see how that all works. Okay, pipe supports as an overview. So what is available out of the box? In Plant 3D, we do have pipe supports available out of the box, and they do come from catalogs which filter into the specs and then into your plant-driven, your spec-driven projects in the 3D modeling space. There are a number of different styles, and you can absolutely build them out into your individual specs, and you can build the custom components too. You can see there's a whole bunch of Python-driven standard styles, and in the products, I'm going to flip over to Plant 3D, and let's have a quick look. I need to change my screen, if you'll bear with me for a moment. It's not let me share. What am I doing? There we go. Show screen 1. Okay. And okay, screen 1. So in Plant 3D, I need to move my panel so I can see my screen. There we go. If we have a look, I've got a standard basic local project sitting here open. Actually, for some reason, I'm open on Isometric. Not entirely sure why. If I open myself, well, we've got it open already. The Plant 3D workspace is activated. We can see here Plant 3D piping or 3D piping. We've got the dynamic specs, which is the piping components coming from the spec. And we also have the pipe support specs palette here as well. Again, driven from the spec. If we open this up here, and we have pipe support spec there as well, and you can look at that in the spec viewer as you can everything else. And you can look at all the different specs, the pipe supports that have been made available inside this project. Keep in mind, specs are project specific and the catalogs are not. So you can pull all these in, really nice and simple. Click on these, drag them in like any other pipe component. There are, when you bring them in, so I'll open that 3D drawing. If I go back up here, 3D drawings, pick a random one. I'm not even sure what's in here. There we go. Nice bit of large piping. Really simple. Let's get a stanchion, like a welded stanchion. Nice and simple. Comes in a long way away. Attach it to the pipe. Make sure I've got my nodes nearest turned on. And we can see there, of course, we can pick a dimension. The highlighted one, if I change that, of course, it'll change ends. Let's put 1,000 millimeters from the end, and stanchion goes in. Once I've got that, of course, I can rotate the part if I need to. I can rotate that, or I can flip it. Doesn't make much difference from this perspective. And of course, I can then move that. Maybe I want that actually to be 500 from that end. And I'm doing that because I've got dynamic going on here, dynamic input. I can also turn that on, and it gives me a few more options when I do this. It's not actually in this particular case. Got that there, and I can also adjust the length there, and you can see it's giving me all the options. I can change how long that should be, make that 1,000 to there, and away she goes. So really nice and easy. Each particular support has different lengths and different setups. These are all Python driven. We will touch on that. If you build your own custom ones, they're a little bit different. So let's have a look at that. Go back to my presentation. Let's change that view actually. I'll go to proper presentation view. There we go. And I'll go back to where I was. Sorry about that. Okay, so custom pipe supports. Oh, sorry, I'm just having to try and move around some windows here because I'm getting too many, I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, custom pipe supports. Okay, so there are a couple of ways to create custom pipe supports. We try to provide a number of basic solutions that might meet your needs, but evidently is always going to be something that you need to do custom. It's just the way of the world. So there's two ways you can achieve that. One is using an AutoCAD block, which is really nice and easy. The long-winded way in being able to create parametric parts is creating a Python scripted part. Now, Python scripted parts, which is a coding language if you're not aware, is the same way that they are built into the native product and requires you to have coding language. Now, you absolutely don't have to use that, and in a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to use the AutoCAD blocks. Now, if we look at the first one to start with, so there is a standard block there, but we can create something very quick. Looking at custom blocks, custom 3D blocks, this is converting, it's like a number of things you can create. You bring in a block from a vendor, or you can bring in a part somebody else has drawn in a manufacturing tool and bring it in as an AutoCAD block. The same way you can do equipment and other bits and pieces and convert them into an intelligent plant component inside the model. In general, one-off components, if you're doing a custom support for a very specific purpose, then do it like this. It's usually the easiest thing. Just model it in Plant 3D. You can even use that 3D model in AutoCAD to generate your construction drawings. Not automatically, unfortunately, but pretty close. But you can use that to create your part support. If you're going to have to use it multiple times or in multiple models, then that's when you want to consider not necessarily using it as a Python part, but using the block as a basis for creating a spec part that gets added, and we'll cover that in a little bit. So using a custom block in AutoCAD, we can use existing or vendor pipe support models, so any DWG block that we can bring in is fine. Keeping it as simple as possible. Over detailing causes things to slow down. Quite often they can get quite clunky, and geometry needs to be 3D solids or AutoCAD blocks. Okay, so Really simple process. Make sure it's scaled and modeled to fit around the pipe, make it look right. Position it along the pipe so it's in the right place physically, so you model it in context or in the right place. Then use plant pipe support convert to command and the ribbon, or in the command line or the ribbon bar to add it to intelligent part. Properties palette, you can assign S keys and arrows, various bits and pieces. Now, if I go to the next screen, there's a little GIF here. Hope it's coming through cleanly, showing that basic process. Up there in the pipe supports, you can grab that block that's been modeled in the right place, and it creates it as a plant part right there. Once you've got it in, it's really nice and easy. It works like any other plant pipe support. You can rotate it, you can click on the node and move it up and down. All the dimensioning features are going to work just the same. The only disadvantage of doing it this way is it's not available for use in other sections, but you can always copy the block and copy it down the pipe or use it somewhere else. Really nice and simple. Great when you need those one-off parts that you can't get anywhere else, or at least in the same model. Again, if you want to add these things in multiple parts or make it part of that controlled spec, which is always a great thing, we need to add it to the catalog. Same method as creating other parts or custom parts, basically. So we need to create the 3D model in a drawing. We need to, now the key thing here is to have it at in the middle of 0. So the node where it's going to be attached to the pipe needs to be 0, 0, 0. And think always when you're doing custom modeling parts, always think of the pipe running along the x-axis. So that's the kind of the tip for piping is always, for 3D modeling block components, always have it along the x-axis. So, and your Cartesian coordinate, it should always be aiming for positive, but definitely in the positive x-axis always the time. So once you've got your block, plant part convert command will convert it into a block in the DWG. You can then add the new part to the default supports catalog. Then it's important in the specs, you need to add the new part to pipe support specs for the project. And there will be one of those in the supports catalog, the shared content area, but you can't create new catalogs for support specs. They all need to be in there, otherwise it doesn't work in the tool palettes. And the name in the coding for Plant 3D is pipe support spec. That is the spec that we're going to put them in. Right, and add new support to the pipe support spec tool palette. So because it's a spec, we generate tool palettes automatically. You can either add it manually. If it's not already automatically opened for you and added to the palette, you may need to add it manually by opening the spec browser. Let's have a quick look at that. So if we go over to Plant 3D, we can open the spec browser. Let's open the spec browser. Go in here again. Support, view in spec browser. If I go to the bottom, World Institution was the last one. I can select one of them and I can say add to tool palette, and it will put that at the bottom as well. Otherwise, you can delete that tool palette. That's fine, and then I can go create tool palette, and that will rebuild that from the spec for me. That's okay because that is all default. So that was fine. That was what created in the first place. So that works for any of the specs, by the way, and a great little tip if you're needing to do that. I lost my presentation again. There we go. So notes on converting blocks to supports. As I said, make sure it's aligned across the x-axis based on the world Cartesian coordinate system. So the origin needs to be 0, 0, and imagine the pipe it's supporting running along the x-axis and generally in that positive direction. The flow of anything really is in the positive direction in our system. Insert the point to be at the center of the support. So 0, 0 is where the center of the pipe is going to be. And supports only require one port, but it does need to be facing in that positive X direction. Okay, so nice and easy. Now, when you go in, you add something in, a custom support. We do need to assign an S key. If you're not familiar with that, this is a table that's come out of the, I forget the name of the PDF, but it's a lovely white paper introduction to Plant 3D isometric customization, something like that. There's plenty of them around. And there's some beautiful stuff there. If you look for Plant 3D SKEYs in Google, I'm sure you'll come to that white paper soon enough. In the properties for the support, if you need to, the type, it needs to be support. And if it isn't that, it can struggle with the isometrics. And the SKEY, that doesn't look right actually, needs to be one of these SKEYs. And this is defining how it looks on the isometric. And depending on how it's been set up, depends how it comes out. So a dummy leg there, dummy leg is going to use this block. Okay, so just be aware of these. And if you are not getting the isometric style as you're after, or it maybe because SKEY doesn't exist, or it may need to be tweaked. Okay, tips and best practice. Let me just pause for questions before we go too further. Alan, is there a way to export the pipe support dimensions for custom pipe supports? Actually, Alan, my recollection, and I'm going to have to get Vinod to overthink about this for me too. I'm pretty sure I've got an ID in the idea station that is asking exactly for that development. My recollection is that any custom dimensions, so variables that you can add in manually, don't get exported. I might have a look at that in a few minutes and see if I can dig that up out of the ideas station.
I'm checking that, David. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. It was put in by me, so that might help with the search. If you find it, let me know. That'd be great. And I'll bring it up. Okay, so the tips. Tip 1, placing and moving of supports. What allowing is talking about here is allowing the precise placement and movement for supports. Now, putting dynamic input can be good, having that turned on allows you to have those various dimensions we were showing before, where you can tab between them. You can turn that on from the customization menu. I did show that before, where you can go up and turn that on. By going up the top, you can see it's turned on. By clicking on it, it comes into the bottom menu. As you can see there in the left graphic, and when it's shaded like that, you can see that it's turned on. And you can flick it on and off by clicking on that in the panel at the bottom. And that, just incidentally, again, if I come in here and I close that, I click on this, that is these dimensions you can see that I can tab between to specify exact dimensions rather than trying to guesstimate or having to build custom construction materials and things like that. Here, I lost myself, there we go. And the next one is dynamic input example. Okay, so this is the example here where we're showing you exactly how that works. In a slightly more complicated environment, you can move them around, tabbing between them. Tip number 2, attaching auxiliary supports to main supports. So this is a really cool one. And I remember when this came in, it was a joyous day. The example we're showing is a dummy leg. Now, dummy leg isn't always in the right place, and I can remember back in the day having to attach welded feet, welded supports to the bottom of dummy legs to account for offsets and movement and all sorts of things. So this is the easy way to do that. You don't have to build out a custom support. You can very simply attach a second support to an existing support. It doesn't work when you go into a third level though, as far as I recall, but a really, really great way to enable those to be connected, and they will then report on the isometric as two supports. It's really nice and tidy. Tip number 3, just see Vinod, you've replied. Trying to find. Did you have a hyperlink for that ID station, Vinod?
Not yet. I'm looking at it, but there are some alternative approaches which I shared with Alan, so I'll get the idea station next shot.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So tip number 3 then, tagging and Ortho annotation. Really fairly straightforward. You can absolutely add tags to pipe supports simply a matter of defining the tag format in the project setup for supports or the particular support you're after. And you can see there this example, we're looking at support and tag format support tag, and then we would see that over here as a tag. Okay, now that's all nice and good, except when you go to the next stage, we can add them. I'm going to come back to the last one because it's a tad more complicated. That allows us to add things like annotation to the isometrics and to the orthographics. Orthographics being fairly straightforward. We can see here author annotate piping and there's support annotation, allowing us to add the tags there really nice and easy, or whatever else you might have added in. Going back to the XML, now the isometric XMLs don't necessarily bring out support tags. It is relatively easy to add them in, although we do need to manually edit the XML for the ISO style. So don't panic, it's not terribly difficult, and I will show you fairly straightforward. So to modify the ISO XML, you need to go to the browser, find the annotation styles, and add a new annotation style for supports. Now that text at the bottom is what you need to do. Also basically doing is copying the existing one and adding in a new one that is, all we're adding is the name there, support tag, and the filter, which is support. Okay, so then once you've got that added in, we're going to, oops, sorry, it will then be shown on the isometrics. Now, did I have that open? I think I didn't. We'll come back to that. If someone wants to go through that in detail at the end, we could certainly come back to that and go through it. Otherwise, I could spend a bit of time digging, but that's relatively straightforward. It tells you where to dig to and copy and paste an existing one and simply rename it and you should be okay. Just checking for questions while we're sitting there. So yeah, looking at the Ortho annotation examples, you can see here, we've added that in the actual paper view for the Ortho, and third one here, and the same supports in the isometric. You can see B12, C56, and C52 also being annotated. Okay, known issues, so spec update. So this is, we've got here a link to our Plant 3D blog post around parametric components. This is not specifically for pipe supports, but a general note for all components. Spec update with pipe supports will override. So, okay, when you go into the spec update, you can edit parts. You can specify the component designations in here. What we're looking at is this designation, whether it says parametric, whether it says custom, or maybe it's blank. What happens if you just in standard environment, I think it's blank when we put them in, and if the component property is blank or it is custom, it's considered a one-off specialty item and can be overwritten. So when you do the spec update, you can overwrite those files. What we're talking about here is setting the component designation to parametric can avoid this behavior. So this is when you've got things with various lengths. It will prevent the spec update from overwriting those InDesign specific lengths. And you need to do that in the, I think that's the catalog, sorry, and make sure that's right. This has been implemented 2018.1.1, so I'm hoping everybody is on that and fixed with it. But if you need more details or to go into more detail of these specifically, you have a look at this blog post. But you can see here in the graphic, so a blank component property, you can't edit geometry in the model, and it receives all updates from the spec. So a blank one, where you got a component designation blank, it will update all dimensions from the catalog. All right, so if you added something in there, we can't, but if you had been able to, it will override those. If you're adding a custom one, where it will say custom in this component designation, that's all right, Dave, it's fine. sometimes it takes a bit, this is a bit much to take in, you need to sort of, takes a bit of digestion. So I'm just talking, having a kind of a chat with the Q&A panel with Dave. So adding a custom one, you can edit the geometry in the model. It's allowing you because it's a custom component, but it is also going to prevent it, because it's custom, from updating the geometry when the spec is updated. Okay, so that's dealing with that and allowing it. If it's parametric, all right, you can edit the geometry in the model, but it can then get property updates from the spec. So what can happen there, and the risk is, if you've got parametric like this in the spec and catalog, when you update a component, you're making the model, you can change the length or some dimension, but then if you do a spec update from the catalog, it will again pull those dimensions from the catalog and override them, which ultimately overwrites them in the model. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. There's a question here saying I can't see the questions here from other attendees. Yes, and I was apologising for that. I was having a conversation with Dave, who is asking about a question about this that he hadn't seen in the panel. I did see this say question here from Alan. This just gets the default values. It doesn't get the properties for ones actually from the project model, as mentioned in the last two comments. Exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Running a little over. Known issue on on some slope pipes. I worked on this quite a bit a little while back for a couple of our customers doing some slope pipe here. And in that particular case, there was some confusion about being a long distance from origin as well. You can see a similar sort of thing if you're working a long way from origin, because of the calculation for angles at large distances from the origin. Keep things as close as you can within a mile or a kilometre of the origin, and you will see less problems. The closer the better, but there is a known point where pipes supports tend to want to be true to the world coordinate system. While that might not matter for most pipes, when you're talking about slope pipe, it'll adjust to a point, and I think if I remember, after a certain point, it defaults back to the world coordinate system to deal with that. So right now, they're not coming out tangent to the pipe. This has been raised. We are looking into it, and development is looking at ways they might fix that. Hopefully it will be redressed at some point in the short term. But as I said, we never promise these things. Just be aware it is an issue, and the way to deal with it is to basically, well, there's a process to deal with it. I won't go into it here, but the link at the bottom of the page here, I think, is the article that goes through how to deal with that in detail and how to correct that. Okay. All right. Wow, that was a lot of information and a bit of a brain dump. I think I'm talking a bit too quickly at this time of the day. Additional resources. There is so much information out there on pipe supports, depending on what you're trying to do. These hyperlinks are really high value for you. If you haven't, when this presentation is published on the resource store, please grab them. If you want to take it, I'm going to sit here for a moment. If you want to take a screenshot, Googling these titles will also give you the same result, or at least make it very easy to find. Top three there is, the top one is the blog post around Python scripting for pipe supports, aka an article about doing much the same, and an AU 2012 scripting components for Plant 3D class. While that seems old, it is still perfectly relevant. Scripting is such a long-term thing, so don't shy away from that, even though it's 2012. Just be aware the interface and the product has changed quite a bit. Python has it, as far as I'm aware. AutoCAD development blog as well. More information there on scripting if you want to learn how to do that and get into it. Python being its own coding language. Although, as I said, you can do it with AutoCAD blocks. You don't have to do that. The other thing we've got there is in the App Store as well, a couple of links. So I'm going to click on these, and that should open for me. Let's give that a moment while it does everything. It's not the fastest thing in the world. Okay, so this is one of the apps you can get from the App Store. It's shared directly here to the vendor rather than the App Store. But if you haven't seen the App Store before, Autodesk, spell it correctly, Autodesk. Apparently I can't type today. App Store, desktop apps. That's not the one. That's what I wanted. Apps, Autodesk.com. And we can look for Plant 3D, and we've got a specific one here for supports. No, let's go to Plant 3D and search supports. So here goes, a couple of examples here. So Python supports there. Leave it at that. So you can see here, Python-driven supports. You can get a bunch of different styles, and this is a paid support. While it's a costed support, there's a bunch of other ones in there as well. If you haven't seen the App Store before, everyone should have. There's a bunch there. Other components and bits and pieces from these people, and as I said, this one as well. Got a few different things, different supports that can come in. Save you having developing. Somebody has already done that. Let's close those and go back to the presentation. All right. So, bit of a brain dump there. Sorry for that, getting a bit too fast, but time for Q&A. I'll leave it there. What have we got? A few minutes left to go. How are we going for questions? Have you got anything I should be addressing? Okay, so I'm seeing here a question here from Vinutha. Create custom support question mark. Sorry, can you clarify what you mean by that? I'm just going to hit the unmute all button. So everybody should have the ability to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you're interested. If somebody else is asking the question and is talking and you're waiting, there is the raise the hand button, which can let me know. I hear somebody. Vanessa, how you going?
Hi, Dave. Actually, I was just saying, like when we saw the slope pipe support, which does not align with the pipe slope, do you normally how we do it is we create a custom component giving the pipe support the necessary angle. So that is the way we are going to go forward as well.
I think that's an absolutely perfect solution. I don't remember what the article says. We can have a quick look while we're talking about it, but that is absolutely one of the solutions I would personally recommend. You can even go so far as to use the existing pipe supports, and if you explode them, they turn into blocks. You can adjust those and then reconvert them back into custom supports. That is an absolutely perfect workflow. Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
I don't know why this is not opening. Maybe it has. I'll check. There we go. So what are we saying over here? Adding spot supports, causes, solution, get the speaker on, select the pipe support not clearly orientated, explode the support to a block reference, and rotate the support to the reference point and convert it back to support. So that's exactly your recommendation as well, Vanutha. Thank you very much. Very well done.
There is one more question. With
Sure.
the catalog components, you said component designation to be parametric. Does it give us the ability to change the dimensions in Plant 3D itself without going into the catalog and then updating them?
So when
Can we do it?
Yeah, let me just go back to that slide. So when you've got a parametric component,
Yep.
So yeah,
Here
so
it-
parametric is driven by the Python script. Yep.
okay. But what when this component is placed in Plant 3D, can we alter the dimensions and get the graphics to update?
I'm actually just now that you're saying that, I'm trying to remember. I've read this one particular way, and I'm just realizing this graphic can be said in both ways. So okay. So this custom part,
Yep.
when it's a custom part, which means it's typically a one-off specialty item and
Mhm.
will not get updated when you update the spec, so that the dimensions
Yep.
won't change.
Yep. But this parametric, then we can edit the geometry in the model, which means when you change the dimensions for a particular variable, it updates the geometry. But the downfall of it would be when you get the spec update and update the property, it might just default it to the spec dimensions. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly, and the blank ones in particular, they will do
Yep.
that. So it will update all spec changes, and you have no
Mm-hmm.
control over what changes. So not that you can edit those in the dimension in the model, but the parametric ones, it will my recollection. You're making me question it now. Is that if you update the spec, it will pull those dimensions and overwrite your edit in the model.
That would be dangerous, isn't it? So the
It
recommendation
is,
would
yeah.
be if you want to change anything, don't touch the standard spec ones, only the custom
No, just
components
make sure that
can.
they've got the right designation in the configuration. So that's what that top graphic is for. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. So in the part, we can define it as
Mhm.
custom or a parametric. If you've created it from an AutoCAD block, for argument's sake, um,
Yep.
rather than a proper parametric, and it comes in as parametric, you need to change that to the custom one. Let's have a look at the article just while we're here. So, okay, so copy line number, parametric design. Is it going to be very easy to look at? So enter, great news, I can change the size of the spec part in the model, but not be affected by spec updates. You zoom in, that's a lot of text. I didn't think that would be so complicated. So setting a spec part's component designation parametric will allow geometry editing in the model. So it can be edited directly in Plant 3D. Yay for the designers. I love the way David writes. He's great. And allow property editing in the model as usual, but spec update will affect these. So if you can allow the editors to change it in the design environment, but if you then do a spec update as a CAD admin, it will override those and adjust them. So that is a danger. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I can't see a situation where you want to do this because, say, in a control valves or something like that, we would want to use this, changing them to be parametric. But then if the CAD admin has got a very strict rules of resetting the like every
Yeah.
morning, if it's been rewritten with the default ones, then whatever we have done on that project is gone. So why would we want to do this rather than keep it as a custom and where the spec updates can't get to it?
My best suggestion is there are reasons for everybody has different reasons. I don't know anybody that's doing spec updates on a daily basis, but yeah, certainly worth thinking about. I honestly haven't put a lot of thought into that, so I don't want to speculate too much without basing it with some fact and some thought.
I mean, it could there would be a situation where this would come in handy.
Yeah, I can certainly see why, as CAD admins, you want to have those things changed and updated. Look, let me open it to the audience. See, anybody got any thoughts or comments that are around this? It's interesting to hear what people are thinking.
Yeah, it's Alan here. The only thing I would, I know with normal parts, if you do a spec update, anything that's currently in the model doesn't get updated. It's only new parts that get that spec update pushed to it, sort of thing. So I don't know if pipe supports would act differently. That's why I think Vin's questioning what's actually, because that kind of behaves differently to all the other spec updates in Plant 3D. It's only new items that get the updated properties as such.
Yep.
Yeah, if they've actually changed. Yeah, that's true. Yes.
So basically now all the old components which has been placed also get an update of the geometry.
If you've changed it in the catalog, I think is the point. If it hasn't changed, then the spec wouldn't be updated. It's like if I remember correctly, the spec update is a delta change rather than a complete rewrite. Otherwise, the GUIDs change and things like that. Thank you, Alan.
So
Appreciate
far,
the feedback.
this is
I'm Vin's
as I
CAD
look on
admin,
this
so that's why I'm sorting it out.
And look, honestly, this is a big part of why I started this back in 2017, is to get everybody together and say, let's say, hey, we're all having the same troubles. Let's talk about this. So that's excellent. Thank you. I just see, Dave, you've unmuted. Did you want to ask something or add some comment?
I just wondered if there was any way to sort of get those SKEYs into the software itself rather than having to refer back to a PDF and reference documentation.
Oh, as a reference list?
Well, it'd be nice to have a GUI to play with rather than having to flick through stuff and remember where you keep it and stuff like that. I guess it's more of a software programming question.
I'm not sure what that would look like. I think it's an interesting suggestion.
Because for me, I'm through and through designer. I'm a visual person. I don't dig XML files and Python script too much. So, yeah, I just wondered if there was any thought to sort of, a bit like you bring Revit stuff, all that stuff is built into the package rather than having to go externally to find it.
Yeah, I've always used the PDF from the white paper as a reference point.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's also a kludge between the old, auto plant days where you had Intergraph software, isn't it? And it's come from there, but it's now been rewritten, and it's be easier to keep up to date if it was built into the software, I'd imagine.
Look, I think it's an absolutely stellar suggestion. So we'll definitely take note of that. I love that and pass that on. It's not going to happen quick, that's for sure. But
I
would also suggest take credit for your idea and drop it into the ideas station.
Yep.
Have
Just on that note, then, what is the development path for Plant 3D? Is it sort of locked and set now, or is there active sort of pushing into certain different areas? What's your feeling there?
How do you mean locked and set?
Well, the last software updates didn't really have too many features for P3D as compared to, so the Dynamo integration into Civil 3D and all those sort of other packages.
I'd actually say moving to BIM 360 was a big change. That was a mammoth effort from a development team in their defense. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. No, there's not been a huge amount of features in the last few years. There has been, and in fact, we were talking about this last year at Autodesk University. The major release 2021 is the move to BIM 360 in 2021.
Right.
And we did add the installation enhancements. So the visibility, the ortho views, things like that, which is great, but it's not a huge sway. We have been, for the last couple of years, we have been focusing on stability and reliability, because we realize there's a lot of cases, people struggling with some things. At the end of the day, if your hammer can't knock in a nail for you, it breaks the nail or it breaks, then you're going to use your shoe. So we've been working on making sure that nail works, that hammer works well. And that's sort of been a focus. There is clearly development going on for things. And look, I think with regard to is it locked in, my experience is there's a strategic direction they're heading, which I'm not at liberty to share. And as the industry and as the needs of the business and the industry change, they will pivot. We'll see, catch cry, pivot. The year of the word of the year to meet the industry needs and the best thing that they can. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess as a user, I hadn't imagined that the BIM 360 stuff was such a hard hurdle to get over. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it was a marathon effort from the team. It took them a full year to develop that. The entire team working on it. So it was a massive change. It doesn't look like a lot from our perspective, but in a lot of ways, that's the end result of a huge amount of work is making it look easy.
Yeah.
A lot of duck tailing going on there.
Yeah, maybe present that to us users a bit more so we can appreciate the effort. I don't know.
We don't want you to see the hard work. We just want you to love the product.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, look,
okay, thanks.
I work with them quite a bit, and they were doing a lot of work on that. It's great. I loved it. It was a big push for myself and Vinod and the rest of the enterprise team to ensure that when we released it, it was a stable product for users, not something that's going to be buggy in the first release. So I'm really, really happy they could do that.
Yeah. I think we're edging towards that direction, aren't we, Alan and Vin? They're all my teammates.
Look, if you haven't used it, jump in and give it a go. It's really cool. It's very good.
David, this has been here again.
Yes.
So with the version upgrades we have seen a lot of problems when we upgrade from one version to the other. There are a lot of bugs just creep in, and this can affect on the projects that you're working on. Is there any known problems that has arisen from 2019 to 2021 so far?
That's excellent question. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Look, I am absolutely sure there will be a few small things. I think I've seen. Honestly, I honestly don't recall, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm not trying to put in a sales hat or anything like that. I honestly, personally don't recall. I'm sure there were a few things. Most of them were a collection in 2021. Anything that came through were relatively small. It was relatively easy workarounds. The huge thing, the benefit between once you're on 2018 and all the way through to 2021, the wonderful thing is there's still no migration, no schema change. So there's that whole migration problems just don't exist.
Because
we
went from sorry, it's Alan here. Yeah, we went from 2017 to 2019, and I think we had a few issues with the isometrics not spitting out the same as they were from version to version. So now that we're, like you said, 18 onwards is fairly stable. So hopefully we should not see those issues.
Yeah.
And we did not get the Autodesk feedback as quickly as we would have liked to. It took months and months, and we had to find a workaround. So I'm just a bit wary of trying to migrate, upgrade from 2019 to 2021 in the middle of a project.
Yeah, no, and you would not be alone there at all. There's plenty of projects that are 5 and 6 years old and won't move because it's too great a risk for them on any product. Look, so from my experience with Plant 3D, there's two kinds of things. There's always, no product is perfect. There's always bugs. If anybody denies that, they're deluded. Like I said, there have been. I think I did the numbers the other day. I think in the last 2 or 3 versions, there was something like 150 specific reported issues that had been resolved. A lot. They've done so much work in the background. Some of it's readable in the READMEs, it's discoverable, but there's a lot of work being done. Some of that may have conflicts, and while we do a lot of testing, the people that are going to find the problems are our customers. You guys, you're the ones who are going to be able to say, but I was doing this yesterday and it doesn't work today. And then our aim is, and speaking for the development team, they want to fix those things. They don't want those things to happen. And if it takes a long time to respond, I'm really sorry, but that's not what we want to happen. It's pretty stable. I can confidently say, jump in, have a go at it, see what you think. I will say though, from my experience, the more changes you make and the more complicated you do make your customizations to Plant 3D, the more risk you are at having complications or difficulties with things not working. It's just it's a complicated network of Swiss cheese that's trying to work together, and the more changes you make, the more complicated you build out your customizations. While that can make for an awesome product, it can often cause problems down the line because we as designers, or the Autodesk designers, can't account for those changes. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it at all, but it's just certain things we can't account for. The only way to know for sure is jump in. I always tell anybody, jump in, take a copy of your project, and have a couple of designers try to break it. Do the things you know are always just a bit hokey and see what happens.
Oh, I can break it. Don't worry.
Well, that's right. Well, that's it. Hey, I'm a big believer. So nothing's ever perfect. If you can break it, let us know. Jump into the forums, create that post. You'll get support from a very, very large bunch of people that are out there monitoring those forums. So yeah, and the Autodesk guys are paying attention as well. Actually, I'm going to pause there.
We're good at breaking things. The only thing is we need support to fix it again.
Yeah, if you're on subscription, you've got the team, and if you're not getting the support you want, please let us know. There's feedback forums there. My best recommendation is just absolutely give us the feedback. If you get those surveys, provide the feedback. If you don't tell us, then we can't help. And if things aren't to your needs, then we do want to know about it. As an organization, we want to know about it. Coming back from the old days when I used to be a cook, the last person you want someone to do is complain and walk out of the shop, because they're the people that don't come back. We want to know that you're not happy so we can fix those problems. Look, we are running over time, so I want to pause. And Vinod, did you want to I just want to give Vinod a chance to comment on any of these conversations before I end the call. Did you want to say anything?
No, I think all my questions got answered.
Okay. I was actually talking about Vinod, if you're still around, or have you left?
Oh, sorry. I thought it was me.
No, you're right. Same statement, but no.
David, I'm still here.
Yeah, mate, how you going? Did you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I think I still have some audio issues. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Look, actually, thank you very much, Vinod. Thank you, everyone, for the conversation. It was absolutely wonderful to actually hear some other voices rather than my own. And we've got some actions there, and there's been some questions answered, so I'm really happy with this. Unfortunately, it's the last one we're going to run in the Asia Pacific time zone. It'll be the last one I'll be running, and they'll be run out of the US from now on. So thank you very much for your attendance over the last 3 years. I hope you can still get value out of the US one. We'll still be dealing with questions and answers. If you can't get into them, please log them in the forum. And apart from that, I'll still be around in the industry. You can certainly probably get me through forums and other places. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you very much, Vinod, for helping out as you have.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
We'll provide you more details on the planned customer success hub around the Americas webinars and the recordings around it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Vinod. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your September, stay safe, and we'll hear from you next month.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.